So yeah, you mentioned that you're currently on the Vodafone grad scheme. So is that something that you applied for straight after university, or did you have any previous experience with Vodafone?
Yeah, so in my second year at Swansea, I applied to do the summer internship at Vodafone. So I did some online tests, an assessment centre in London, and then I got like approved for the summer internship. So I did that for 3 months in between my second and my third year. And at the end of the summer internship, they then offered me the graduate scheme. So then I came back to Swansea for a year, finished off my degree, and then the graduate scheme started in September after we sort of finished university early summer. So yeah, you can apply for the graduate scheme just sort of online straight after university because obviously it is a graduate scheme. But the way that I went into it, I happened to find the summer internship, enjoyed that for 3 months, and then I was lucky enough that they offered me to go straight onto the graduate scheme.
Okay.
So they basically just offered to you. Like, did you ask for it, or were they like, you're good, we like you, come in here?
Yeah, so I think there was maybe about 30 of us on the graduate scheme, on the summer internship, sorry. And we were all there for 3 months in various different departments. We were all just put in a random department. And then, yeah, basically, based on like manager feedback and like reviews and things, they then chose, I think maybe like 15, 16 of us. They offered us to go straight onto the graduate scheme. They couldn't take everyone because obviously they wanted to open it up to the public and get like a different pool of talent. Um, but yeah, so we were just lucky enough that we sort of got highlighted as good ones, I guess, and then offered the graduate scheme.
Awesome. So what were you doing during your summer internship? Was the role similar to your grad scheme right now, or was it quite different?
Yeah, I'd say it's quite similar, but because so for the summer internship, I was there for 3 months in one department, and for the graduate scheme I'm currently on, you do 6 months in, so it's 2 years long. So you do 6 months in one department, 6 months in another, and then you have a 1 year rotation for your final year. So because I'm in the role for 6 months, I'd say I've got more responsibility in the graduate scheme than I did in the summer internship because they can give me like longer projects to run with. Um, but yeah, for the summer internship, I was put in the marketing team. So I did get to work on some really cool projects, but 3 months by the time you've settled into the business and then you leave again really isn't time to sort of do really detailed work. So it was sort of I was updating things that they like updating a platform that they wanted updated and sort of doing the admin work for them, I guess. Whereas now in my role for my first 6 months, I'm currently in HR. And with that, I've run with a lot more projects. I've managed to like create my own projects, and I'd say I've been given a lot more responsibility. And I've just sort of been able to get on with it a bit more.
Yeah.
So, what would you like for your internship? I'm guessing that was the hardest bit of getting into Vodafone. What do you think that really took their interest inside, like in you? Was it the final year project of university? Was it, I think you used to work in a Formula, if I remember correctly, in a Formula team. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I worked for Formula One. So I think it's difficult. So with the summer internship, like I said, we did a series of like the online tests that you usually do, like the numerical ones and the literacy ones. And then you had like an online interview. And then if you passed those, you then went on to do an assessment centre in London. And I'd say that's probably the day that was like most important in terms of you had some um, group sessions where they kind of saw how you worked in a team and saw your personality that way. Then they gave you like a theoretical. We had to like think of a product or something that was like environmentally friendly, and we had like 20 minutes to read a brief, and then we had to literally come up and pitch it. So on the assessment day, it was pretty intense, and it covered quite a range of things. So I don't personally know why, but I wouldn't say the CV was necessarily a big part of it. I think like with with the way that internships and graduate schemes happen, because of a lot of it is quite manual online, I don't know how much your CV is taken into account, if that makes sense, because it very much looks at like how articulate you are with numbers and things. And I guess it kind of filters people out that way. And then, yeah, on the assessment day, they really do. It was pretty intense. There was maybe like 15 to 20 of us, and it was a whole day. So I think most of it, I would say, is probably based on the assessment centers.
Awesome. I think it's really interesting that they give you the opportunity to go to work in different departments. So what department are you working in at the moment in your grad scheme?
So I'm currently in HR, and
In HR.
then at the end of March, so it's coming up quite soon, I'm moving into commercial and operations as a pricing specialist. So like it's so varied, which definitely was one of my concerns going into the graduate scheme. And it's difficult because like after 6 months you've just settled in, and like now I've got some really good contacts in the department that I'm in, but I'm going to move to a completely different area of Vodafone. But one thing I would say is the whole point of the grad scheme is so that you can find something that you like and equally rule out areas that you don't like.
Yeah.
And when I got my first placement was in HR, I was actually really disappointed because I've never had an interest in HR. But I've absolutely loved it. And now it's definitely something I'd consider going into, which has surprised me, to be honest. But yeah.
No, that's really cool.
I was going to ask you as well, like, for example, you know, the whole day when you're getting interviewed and seeing your people person skills and all that, did you ever feel like you didn't go well? Because I think a lot of people get that, but they're like, oh man, I just went really bad. I'm not going to get the job. And then you're like, oh, I went better than I thought I did.
Yeah, I think number one, because it was in London, it felt really like intense and important because you're in like this big, huge office, and it was just kind of quite overwhelming from that sense. But then, yeah, some of the things like for the group, like project that you did, I'd looked up online on how to do assessment centers, and I'd kind of managed to prep for that quite well, I think. Whereas like throughout the day, you all went through different stages at different times. It was like staggered. And I can remember some people came out and there was a one-to-one interview that was about 20 minutes long. And loads of people came out of it and they were like, that was so easy. Like it was so relaxed. It was just a conversation. And that was the last thing that I did. And in my opinion, mine went horribly. Like I came out of it thinking like, oh my God, everyone said that was like the easiest part and the best part. And I thought I'd absolutely flunked it. They asked you questions. They weren't questions you for an interview. You'd prep like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And they threw out questions like, what's the most inventive thing you've ever created? And I was
Wow.
like, nothing. So yeah, I personally, yeah, like you said, Neil, I think it's very much like sometimes you can feel like you've sort of done well in some of the areas, but because there were 4 or 5 different challenges, you kind of came away from it just with no idea at all, really. It was intense, but it was kind of a great experience as much as it was scary. I think like once you've done one, you know what you're going into. And because they are just sort of like examining you, you kind of just need to be yourself. Like as cliche as that sounds, although you want to get the job, like there's no point faking what you're like, because then when you go into the role, you might not be fit for the company anyway. So I feel like you have to be quite genuine and just deal with situations as you would do. Otherwise, if you got the job, you then might really struggle.
Yeah, 100%. So I was going to ask if would you advise other students to go through sort of this route that you went, like take up summer internships before actually thinking about grad roles? And would you advise other students to look at opportunities with Vodafone?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd say a bit like I touched on then, if you can apply to a summer internship which has an assessment center in it, I think it's great to try and get experience at assessment centers, because even if you're not successful, it means that I personally didn't like Vodafone after my summer internship, only because it's a global company. It's huge. Everyone's so friendly, but because it's global, to me, I felt quite disconnected at times. So I didn't intend to accept the graduate scheme. I'd planned when I graduated to look and see what other jobs were out there, and the graduate scheme would be my fallback. Then obviously the pandemic hit and I didn't even bother looking at jobs. I was just grateful for a 2-year secure job. And their base is local to where I live. So it all fell into place for me. But I think the summer internship's a great way to just get a sense of the business and decide if you like it. So I'd say apply for summer internships because there's no harm in it. In terms of Vodafone, I think the grad scheme and the summer internships are amazing. The company, I mean, I'm not just biased because I've been very honest. I didn't really like it, but since I've joined the graduate scheme, they're so invested in like the future talent. Like they see us as the future leaders, and they really do invest a lot of time in like your development, and you're so supported that it's definitely a company that I'd recommend for a graduate. And also, I'd say most people that you meet, they've been with Vodafone for like 10 plus years. Even if it's not in the same role, because it's such a global company, a lot of people sort of jump around roles. But I think that kind of goes to show how good the company is and the fact that it looks after its employees, because they don't have a very high turnover. Like people have been there for ages.